Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about our soul journey, spirit inside. Who are we? What are we made out of? Is it all about the human body? This book we were given in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, and we said, here's the way it is. It's always been that way in the past. It's how you're fulfilling the way going forward. Are we still stuck in old truths? Are we still stuck in old beliefs? Or are we now, in the year 2023, blossoming into this new expanded consciousness, new awareness, expanding our soul and spirit? Perhaps maybe we're learning how to unpack our wings. Maybe letting go of those things that have rooted us and chained us to the earth, to the old family stories, to the old ways of past regret, shame, and guilt. Are we ready to fly free and saying that is all just consisting of those 27 letters of the alphabet? I'm ready to throw them all up, learn about telepathy, be able to connect to people, be able to sense their energy, and feel what I am deep inside. All of that other stuff, we are now at the precipice point of it all starting to dissipate, and isn't this an awesome time to be alive? My guest today is Elaine Hoem. Her book is Everyday Soul Dances, a guide to soulful living in the midst of uncertain times. Elaine, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
I'm very happy to be here too, Jeanette. Thank you.
So glad to have you with us, Elaine. You know, you say about that word right there, uncertain times. I think humanity, the collective, the society, the people around us, whatever you want to use as your word and label, I feel is on a bridge. And they are on a bridge, and it's almost like they're scattering because they can't swim. The door behind them is almost closing, and they're afraid to open the one in front of them. Do you think perhaps that's where we are as soul beings right now?
That's a beautiful way to say it. And that, given the stuckness of that, people are fearful.
Yes.
There's so much chaos and hatred and violence and so much that is beyond our human mind's capacity to deal with, that people don't know what to do or where to go or who to trust. The old ways don't work anymore.
Yeah.
They don't know what the new ways are. Right. However, there are always glimmers of light and of possibility. And we're in a time where more and more and more of us are awakening to the fact that there's so much more to the story about who we are as human beings. So what I like to think of is that as we develop from toddlers are very open to spirit and to the numinous and to what's holy. And then in our education and socialization processes, our focus is on other things that have to do with surviving in the ordinary world, which is all well and good, except that children lose their spiritual sense because it's not promoted in our society. And that's the sad thing. And so we spend the next parts of our lives asking questions. Who are we? And why am I living like this? And how can I possibly cope with this crazy, crazy world? And then other things become distorted within us. You know, our emotions get out of whack, so we have depression, anxiety, or because of our own personal traumas, we have PTSD that's not treated well enough usually, or we have anger and hatred or addictions. All these things can happen because we haven't developed the tools as humans to remember our spiritual amazement, the part of us that's within, instead of all of this outer focus.
You know, Elaine, it's so important that you say that about the toddlers, too. I have some grandchildren, and my one grandchild said to me, Grandma, you bring arts and crafts, but we can buy this stuff. And I said, oh, but we're going to be creative. And she said, what does that word mean? She just said, what does that word mean? You know, and I think we kind of went on that aspect, too. But also, too, I had given them for their birthday tutus and angel wings. And they said, what do we do with those? And I said, it's just to be able to fly and have fun. And then I had given them a book, and the title of the book was called Maybe. And they said, what does that mean? So I think the idea is us as awakened beings that you and I and several others are, we are being also asked to be able to promote this within the children by sharing the words and connections. So we are being asked to be those spiritual leaders and teachers, not a guru that says, hey, follow me, not a coach that says, rah, rah from the side because you did it and slap your hands when you don't. We are asked to teach from the heart. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Well, it's beautiful, and you're so true that being grandparents, we get to do this with some of our grandchildren. Not all of them are open to it. Mm-hmm. And not only the children, but whomever we meet.
Right.
It's so fun for me. Like my website was down, and so I called Bluehost 3 days ago, and the woman thought she fixed it, and it still didn't work. So yesterday I called and talked to a man who had an Indian accent, and once the website was up, it came up to my meditation page, and he went, oh, I really need this.
Awesome.
Because of the stress of my job, when I have my lunch hour, and this was late in the day, I'm going to listen to your meditations. And I'm going, oh, this is so cool. This is the perfect soul dance.
Yes. You know, so
it can happen anytime. Yeah.
It's so exciting when that happens. You know, even I've had guests on my radio show before. You know, I had said to this one person, he had written a book. He has very low vision and almost blind. And he had written a book. And I picked up the book to read it. And I said, gosh, I mean, I myself have low vision. And I was looking at it. And I said, this isn't even in normal font. This is like mini minuscule. What happened to your publisher? You know, did your publisher not look at the type? And I was going, it was to alert him that not all that is seen is seen. You know what I'm saying? And you don't always need to see to know. So I think sometimes we look at it and we say, we always have the answers in the right way. But yet what you and I are sharing today is the what ifs, the possibilities. And I always liken it to, let's flip the coin on that story, you know? And sometimes someone, you know, would say a word to me or something like, I would share my stories, you know, because my life was pretty rough. And they would say, oh, I'm so sorry for your suffering. And do you know, Elaine, I had to pull out my iPhone and type in define suffering. I did not know what that word meant. It was like, but that's not me. I don't relate to that at all. And I think the idea is that people are going through events in their lives, and they're carrying them as a badge and identifying it as them. And where myself, I went through events in my life I looked back in retrospect and then said, oh, that was an experience. I see it. And I definitely went through a lot of the grief and a lot of the pain and a lot of the suffering for many years, at times. But then eventually looked back, reframed it, and said, awesome. That was a gift. That was a journey. That was an experience. And then said, I can share the story going forward. So here's a choice. Are we stuck in it? It's our identity. Or as a soul and spirit, we realize we're having human experiences, but they are not our identity. Do you think?
Oh, I think that's beautiful the way you said it, and it is exactly right. Because I know many people, some in my own family, where they identify with being victim and with suffering. And it's all I can do is to say, why don't you get some treatment so you don't suffer anymore?
Right.
Because we all suffer with these horrible things that happen to us, but what we do next is what's important.
Right.
And you're saying that you, like me, I don't know my English, obviously. We choose to learn from the really, really hard times and to grow and to open and to do whatever we need to do, if it's psychological, physical, emotional, whatever, to find ways out of the morass that we're in. It's not okay to stay there for people like us. And that's one of the joys I have in my life. I see myself doing this until my dying breath, and it's so fun and so light. And yes, how wonderful that we get to talk to people about.
But don't you think, too, Elaine, that's because you and I are doing a life of mission in service. We are not here to have an ego-limited lifetime journey. That's two different things, very, very distinctly different. In other words, I can tell you, when I was doing it, when I was a dental hygienist, and everybody thought I was doing that job, and I had all kinds of comments about it and all that other stuff, but when I was doing it, I was doing the job, and I knew what I was doing, and I stayed in my lane. I knew what my spirit was telling me, and it wasn't telling me too much, but it said, you're okay, keep going. And when I looked back at it 10 years later, I said, oh, that journey was so that I could look into the eyes of all of those souls as I put the chair back and see fear, see shame, see guilt, see scaredness, and just calm them. And just that was my life of service at that time. But don't you think the true gift of an awakened, open, expanded consciousness, soul being, spirit that's living in this time is when you can do that and look back at your life, that everything after your breath is a gift. Everything is in service. Well,
in Everyday Soul Dances, I come from the yogic traditions, from these ancient truths from thousands of years before BC or 400 years. And it's all about that. It's about karma, what we come in to change, what we come in to create in a particular lifetime, and then dharma, which is our sacred duty. And I didn't find my sacred duty for quite some time. But once I found it, it's like, oh, this is exactly who I am and what I'm meant to be doing. And we can see that with others. And when people are living from their sacred duty, they're happy, they're light, they know their mission, they know their truth, and they're strong in being. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think because of yoga coming to the Western world in the 70s mostly, it opened up these new concepts that are different from our usual religions here. It opened up the expansiveness and the possibilities of who we are. And it starts out with yoga, hatha yoga asanas that gets us in touch with our body and the sacredness of our body and the temple, our beautiful hearts.
Right.
So we start taking care of ourselves, but then at the end of each session, there's a meditation, and then it's like, okay, this is opening up to my soul. It's releasing my emotions. And so this whole meditation revolution is what it's called in my tradition, is so wonderful, because once we know that we're spiritual beings having human experiences, we're good to go. It's just so clear that we keep working ourselves to let go of this stuff, the karmic stuff that still gets in our way, and it always will. But we get lighter and lighter, and we serve just because we exist and with whomever we come in contact with.
But also, too, I think that when we are clearing things, we always think we're only clearing our own stuff. We're only clearing our, quote, ancestral genealogical line. When you and I are doing mission and service, we are clearing the collective, the cosmos, the universe. That is very profound and different, because sometimes people will say, well, where is this stuff coming from? And someone in the spiritual world that's bought the wrong book, they kind of so to speak, they say, well, if it's coming up again, it must be reflected inside of you. And I'm going, oh my gosh, go away. Or if it's coming up again, perhaps you didn't take care of it before, you have more work to do. Or if it's coming up again, you have another lesson to learn. And I'll say, it showed up in the ethers. I knew how to read it, and I'm assisting in service. And they turn around and go, and it's, I think it's so funny, when that happens, Elaine, because so many times I can honestly tell you, I feel like I live a life of pushing buttons. I always say I'm like a toddler. I stick my finger in anything to see what it does. So I don't even know people, and I'll say something, and my daughter will say, Ma, you just live without a filter. What's your deal? And my deal is that it isn't me that it's coming from. That those sounds and those words are coming through me to be heard by someone else. That's a life of service. Do you think, do you think perhaps if we could learn about, I'm going to be starting potentially this summer. I live in New Orleans, and there's always hurricanes, and it totally discombobulates my energy. But I'm going to start a program called Spiritual Training, because people are totally unaware of this and how to be able to, okay, well, awesome. Maybe you were a spiritual trainer before, you never even got it. So wake up. So we're going to shake some timbers, so to speak. Don't you think that's what you and I are doing today by sharing our stories, sharing what you did in your book about it's time to shake some timbers and see that old alphabet consolidation is not the truth?
I had not put it in terms of cosmic changes. However, I am so clear that when we let go of the persona and the ego and the karmic stuff that is so hurtful to us, we have immense support from the divine world, however we want to call it. And so, yes, I know that we're clearing ancestral and familial karma, which I'm so happy to do for my family. It's wonderful. Right. However, it's bigger than that, and people like you and me are we're holding. As a collective of us, we don't even need to know one another, because we're in this spiritual realm, and then the divine beings are going to do whatever they're going to do through each one of us And we're changing the world. And I'm so clear
Yes.
that we're doing that. I'm so happy that we're doing that.
Right. Well,
I
because
grew up
I feel...
in that.
Because I think, Elaine, if you look at it, a lot of people now are coming up to the ideas of understanding their past lives. Well, your past life, dude, doesn't include your grandmother, your mother, your father, your brother, your aunt, and your uncle way back. It includes the eternal adventures of your soul and your spirit. And that's super important to recognize, is that you are not just this one lineage. You are an eternal being that has a multitude of all of these ancestors that you have fragments left over in you, right? So if that's true in essence, that's how we clear the collective, perhaps?
It's so beautiful to think of it. It's so easy because we're such complex beings. It's real easy to think, this was my past life, and that's why it's coming up again now, so I can clear it. And I can tell you 5, 6, 7 of those past lives that have been cleared in the last 30 years or so of my life. So it's easy to get focused on our individual karma. However, we're brothers and sisters to one another in this lifetime and way, way, way back. And so it's so wonderful that so many of us have come into this life at this time to see beyond the individual and the familial, and to see that there's so much more to our story once we open up spiritually. And then it's infinite, the possibilities, the creativity, the love, so much is incredible that right now I'm feeling very humble and very grateful. Yeah.
I think sometimes I get very existential and esoteric kind of ideas. And, a lot of the people would say, well, that doesn't fit in my wheelhouse right now. And I'll say, close your eyes, close off your senses, and now tell me. And you get a different story. Even I always liken the thing, I say that there's a lot of words in the human language that need to go kicked to the curb, And I had a patient at one time when we were talking, and they kept talking about their illness, and they caused it as their illness has now caused them to get a car sticker that has now caused their disability. Do you see? So, and I had a guest on the show, and they were talking about their disability. And I said, what if the prefix dis or un no longer existed? Disease, disability, unhealthy. And what if we just said, show me your unique abilities. Show me your unique place where you are today. Show me your unique set of symptoms today. Show me your unique set of how you're engaging in the world. Then we could take it as not a negative connotation, and we wouldn't be so afraid of talking about mental health, abuse, trauma, PTSD, all of those past things, HIV, AIDS, all of those engagements of exercises that we've done in the world. We wouldn't be so afraid of them. We would embrace them as our unique experience. Perhaps?
It's the difference between knowing that we are living an ordinary life, we're an ordinary person, and we're just going to play this thing out for whatever it is. And then we can make all kinds of judgments and have all kinds of adjectives about what our life is like. And how we're stuck, or we're going to stay stuck because that's the way it is in our family or whatever. And the difference is when we focus on the positive, we open all kinds of doors. And a lot of people have never had the experience of being told that they had positive attributes or appreciated for them. So many of us have grown up in families that were damaged and didn't know any better. And so there's all of these beliefs that we carry about being lesser, not fitting in, being no good. You know, you hear it all the time in the field of psychotherapy, and I'm sure you do too.
Right.
But, so then any person, teacher in a grade school or whenever, who shifts the perspective into, wait a minute, I think you're beautiful. And look at this report you just wrote. And this illness has more meaning than you're able to see right now. I wonder what that might be.
Right.
And opening doors to people's minds like that it's a simple thing for us to do most of the time, but it's a profound thing to experience when somebody offers that to you. And I love that we do that. And that's happening. You know, I think about, I grew up in the 40s and the 50s, so I've really looked at, you know, the many, many different attributes of different decades.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I'm so happy to be here in the last 20 years, because so many people and books and teachings and teachers, there's an infinite variety of ways to open those doors. And I'm just so happy to be a part of that.
Right. And you know what also, too, I think the idea is that I grew up myself in the 50s, and when I look back, I say, isn't it awesome? You know, like the idea we said of illness. This illness might show you something. It might show you, and, you know, sometimes people will say, but I feel so broken, and I'll say, okay, tell me more. And they're like, I just need to be held. I've never been held. I just need for someone to sit with me and listen, or I need someone to just sit with me and don't talk to me, just be there, unconditional caring, you know. So I think the idea is that if we can understand that and take everything down a rabbit hole, so to speak, I always liken it to the black hole. We kind of take all of our stuff and stuff it in this black hole, all of our stories, our beliefs, our truths, all this other stuff, you know, and then kind of keep asking the questions, like me. Keep probing, keep pushing your finger in the outlet, kind of, so to speak, until you come to dissect it down to a few words or a few feelings or emotions or needs. And then all of a sudden, the person, when they truly feel that, they squeeze through the other side of the black hole, and all of that stuff releases because it no longer has a chain on them. And then where do you get on the other side of the black hole? But into the cosmos, and you're free. And isn't that the most beautiful picture? If people will say, I'm in this space, how do I get in that cosmos? I want that. And I said, well, there's a little bit of work to do. And let's go do the work.
Yeah. I think, geez, your words really grabbed me. I lost my mind for a moment.
You're on the other side of that black hole almost.
I know. So many of us can say those stories. I've never been held, or I've always been criticized, or, you know, I only see victimhood, or whatever. Our world is fraught with bad upbringings because our parents didn't know any better, and their parents didn't know any better.
Right.
And so when there's a doorway presented like you just talked about, we transform into our spiritual selves, and a whole new world opens up that has possibilities, that lets us know we're divine beings, that there's nothing the matter with us, that we have karma to clear, and that's good and okay and necessary, and that we have much more to offer than we ever could have imagined before. I love that. I love the transformation that can happen.
Right. But also, too, I think, Elaine, is that we have to address the whole concept of fear. Because, you know, I remember distinctly when I was doing my rounds in the hospital with open heart surgery, day after day after day, at the head of the patient watching and assisting in surgery. And I can distinctly remember, here's this body on the table. all of the lifeblood that keeps it working is in a machine across this big room in a machine. And everything is turned off, and you're pretty much essentially flatlined almost, okay? And I remember thinking and watching it, and I would come home, and I had 4 kids, within 10 years, and I would come home at breakfast and lunch, and they were little then, they were under 10, and I would say, oh, well, this is what I did today. Oh, this is what, we cut open the heart and this body, we checked this, and we did that and the other. Most people would say they scoffed at the idea, how dare you do that? But my children have now grown up, and one child is helping hearts of kids who are in gangs in California. My other child is an ER physician, and my other child is trying to find his own heart. So I think the idea is, can we be open to share all of our stories and allow ourselves to be vulnerable without that fear of someone judging or whatever, but also us judging ourselves too? Because I looked back on the story with the open heart, and I said one day, oh, where was the heart? Where was the soul and the spirit? And I looked up, and the spirit and the soul, they were in the corner. They were flying. They were just waiting. It was an energy ball of glitter, and it was just in the corner of the room.
You were able to see it. That's incredible.
Yes. Yeah. And distinctly. And when my father went through open heart surgery, I did the same thing. I went and reflected back on it, and I says, where are you? I said, and he was all fluttering around because he was confused. I says, put yourself up in the corner. Stay there. Look down on it. And the first words out of his mouth in his spirit form were, it's awesome. Look at that stuff. I wish I was smart enough to know how to do that. Look at this crazy stuff. And then he started getting scared, and I said, go back to that corner. Go back to that corner and stay there, So even though we don't have those conversations all the time with people, we can have these conversations with soul and spirit and find out what it's about. Perhaps?
Yes. Fear cripples all of us at different times in our lives, no matter who we are, I think. And but that also is an avenue to learn from if we choose to. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm this amazing person, and I just contracted into fear, and I'm throwing everything, so many things that are good, I'm throwing it out the window because I'm afraid.
Right.
And we could do a whole course on overcoming fear,
Right.
Fear and also forgiveness. I think those are the 2 really, really big ones. I have chapters about self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others in my book. I did not write about, I wrote about courage. And so the counterbalance to fear that I think I could take it deeper for sure. And within myself as well, too, I'm pretty good at working through things and preparing, so I'm not fearful. But every once in a while something comes up, and I think you're right. It's hard because of who our families are or have been. It's hard to be open to be vulnerable to another, I think.
Yeah. I think also, too, where I got to that point, Elaine, was I got to the point where, yes, my family is very violent. Yes, they are very destructive. Even to this day, in their older ages, they have not learned. They are not interested. They have just cast me out, and they're not interested. I'm like written off. And I said, awesome, that's fine. And I think what I did is I detached from their connection because their connection wasn't serving me. So in spiritual training, we always talk about the connections and how people will suck the life out of you, so to speak. And the answer is if you can just disconnect from them, love them unconditionally from afar, and be able to let them be in their own space and time, it's sort of like tornadoes going across the earth. And then along comes a hurricane. Do you know what I mean? You have to let them be in their own space and time. It's just required. So what I did was I looked at them not as my ownership. They were not my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle. I used their first name. So I then detached from still that I wasn't always, you know how you conjure up things, you're not always calling in their spirit or the whatever because you aren't using the identifier that they're attached to you. And that has probably been the most freeing thing ever when I've done that. Because it just, that part of that, whatever, doesn't show up.
Well, and when we don't detach,
yes,
we're always being pulled back into
correct
those ordinary and abusive connections, and then that keeps us stuck. So it's our society does not appreciate when somebody like you or like me chooses to disconnect from family like that.
Right.
They think we're selfish. We're whatever. You know, there's all kinds of stuff that goes with it. But
how about this one, Elaine? They say, "Who do you think you are?"
Well, that was my mantra growing up. I heard that all the time.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Who do you think you are?
I even put it in my book because it's like I had to get rid of that, you know, and then I reframe it. Who do I think I am? I've been given this great gift of all of these words to write this book, so I'm now an author. And that it's so important that we choose our company well, you know, and that we not stay in relationship with people that try to pull us back into the ordinary and the abusive. We can't do that. It's horrible for our spirit and for our soul. It's not part of our soul dance to do that, to stay stuck there. And I think there's a lot of people in the world that don't understand that, and they'll say, well, that's not being Christian or whatever. But the truth is we have to live in the communities that uplift and support us, period. It's that simple. Yeah. And so sometimes we have to say no and move away, and it is freeing. It's very freeing. And then that allows the other people to work on their karma or not, and it's not our responsibility because they're not the people we can help.
Yeah. Well, you know, also, too, you know, I've seen ghosts and angels my entire life, and I've always been connected to spirits. In fact, 2 or 3 spirits showed up on my door the other day on my brand new floor. There was an image of a woman and a scoundrel, and there was a big X there. And I said, oh, interesting. Y'all must need help. So I let them be there for a few days, and then I kind of like sprayed them with love, helped them move on, and we were all good. But I think the idea is that we don't understand that the human beings walking the earth with all of their issues are the very same as the spirits in ghost form or angels, okay?
Yeah.
That's all the very same thing. So if you don't disconnect from them now, if you don't think that they're not going to show up again later, because you'll keep calling them in saying, oh, I need to go to I need to go to my angel reader so that I can find out if my loved one is okay and if they're doing okay over there and if they see anything else from me. And it's like, oh, gosh, leave them alone. They're gone. They're free. Let them go, you know? Or the idea of, you know, how can we say, oh, there's something bumping in my house? Something's causing or creating the misfortune in my life. Well, maybe it's all the energy that you brought around you. Maybe there's a ghost sitting right next to you that keeps pushing your buttons that maybe you didn't deal with, of your own fragments, of your own energy, pieces of your own self.
That's why we need people like you and me to be able to see beyond and you know give new constructs about, well, there's more to this story, so let's take a deeper look at this, because people can be crippled just by this, like you know, hanging on to maybe a baby that died early for years and years and years, and some of that's beautiful because they can get to know each other still, but it also can be limiting because we haven't healed.
Right.
And the other being also isn't free to move on until we can do the healing, I think.
But you know what also, too, I always say this on my show. I say, breathe. Everything else is lagniappe. And lagniappe is a Southern word. What that means is a gift. It's extra. I'm putting a biscuit on your plate that you didn't ask for. I'm giving you some dessert that we just wanted to share with you. I'm going to give you a kiss and a hug on the way out the door. It's lagniappe. It's extra. So if you can say the breath of life is the only thing you're guaranteed, everything else is lagniappe or a gift of life, then you don't walk around with shame, guilt, remorse, all of that other stuff of, oh my gosh, they left us too early. I didn't get to see them have grandkids. Oh my gosh, it's a horrible thing. Or how about with the disease? I'm now a survivor of it. And they keep putting these labels and armor on themselves that is really unnecessary. Do you think?
I do, and I think it's more of what we've been talking about, one of the themes of still buying into the constructs of an ordinary life.
Yes.
And what's happening now, especially with people like you, I think, also the work I've done, I do, is that our role is to open doorways into the transformative, into the collective unconscious, into the hugeness of who we are as infinite beings, so that there's so much more to the story. And then there are also ways to rethink and reframe all this. And that's where the healing happens. Right. And until we have people who can do that with someone who's lost a child, for instance, that pain and that focus, it's a stuckness in the ordinary. And that is an energetic blockage, which keeps both people from moving on, I think.
Right, and also, too, if we think about it as energy has to go somewhere. You know what I mean? It's either going to turn into a disease, it's going to come out in your words when you're speaking as venom, it's going to come out in how you do things or serve a meal as burning things or whatever. It's going to come out. It's going to show up. I mean, I've experienced every single one of those and umpteen million more, you know what I mean? And the idea is that if you really, truly have, as you and I have, is this we exist from an unconditional source of love. That's all there is. You know, I can distinctly remember, this thing about hurting or pain or hurting someone. I had gone at one time to a therapy session for a family member, and I had shared a story with the therapist that was there, and they said, well, why didn't you push him off the edge? If he did those things or what they did those things, why didn't you just push him and whatever? And I said, that does not enter into my realm. You know, in other words, I don't engage in that stuff. I could distinctly remember at one time, and this sticks boldly out of my mind, there's only one time I was really mad at somebody, and I threw a jar of yellow French's mustard out in the kitchen, and it went all over the walls and everything. Let me tell you, I let go of crying like nobody's business because number one, I had to clean it up, but number two, I felt that I had hurt or affected something in the energy force, and that was not my intention.
Yes.
So don't you think what you and I are sharing today is how can others understand they may have had glimpses and glimmers of what we talked about, but they didn't recognize its potential?
Well, I think that's why these times are so great, because, you know, listening to talk shows, listening to radio, going for healing sessions with people who know about the transpersonal realm, reading books. I mean, I saw a photo somewhere on your site about all of these books that you've interviewed people with these amazing concepts and stories. And so we just have to look a little bit to find something or someone who's going to speak to us and be able to help us. And it might be reading a chapter in a book that will get a person to somebody like you to do the next step. And I think that's what we're about, is to honor all of the ways and possibilities that we have today. It's amazing. And then to just keep moving forward. There's this golden path that we're all on. And we're at different stages of that because of our karmas and our consciousness. But it'll keep opening and opening if we have the awareness and desire and constancy, willingness to keep moving forward, and to know that there's something else that's greater that is within me and also reachable. And so that changes the story when we can make that commitment to step on the path. You know, like M. Scott Peck said, the road less traveled. And that's perfect, because this is the road less traveled until we're fully immersed in it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Right.
So.
Well, in closing, Elaine, what I really wanted to say, too, is that it isn't about a road and you need to give me the pebbles and tell me how to put them down. Really, what I'm giving you is wings. You know, I want you to fly high and just be free. Because when you're tethered to something, as a road, the heaviness of a rock, you know what I mean, that kind of thing, you're part of something. But when you're flying, you're part of everything. So do you want to be part of one thing or everything? Because our soul is part of everything, right?
Right. So you're saying that we might start out walking on that path, and that's fine, but eventually, as we open more, we're going to be lighter, and then we're going to run, and then we're going to lift up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Because lifting up, we got to get out of this old human stuff. You know, you can't get out of there until you say, I'm done. Shut the door, put on your wings and go, right?
Well, it's so fun, you know, I mean, just even to have this conversation, because it's all possible. And I guess that's the message that we say to people when we have these conversations, is that there's so much more to you. You're much more beautiful. You're much more talented. You have much more potential and creativity. And you are a golden, spiritual, amazing being, just as we all are. So find that being within yourself. Yeah. And that will bring you home. So. Absolutely.
Well, Elaine, it was such a pleasure to have you with us today. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work? That would be wonderful.
Well, specifically through the book, it's Everyday Soul Dances, a guide to soulful living in the midst of uncertain times. And I have a website, which is that name, Everyday Soul Dances, that is now up and working. There are 9 meditations in the book at the end of specific chapters, and those are recorded. My son and I recorded them, so there are QR codes in the book, or you can just go to the website and listen to the meditations. The best ones for what we're talking about today have to do with, I lived at Lake Tahoe, and so they have to do with the lake and the sunset of the lake. So those are the first 2. There's another one called a rainbow meditation that is very, very healing, because you're bringing these beautiful celestial colors into your body. And so I'm on the book, Everyday Soul Dance, is on Facebook. And I'm starting a new Instagram thing that I don't know what to say about that yet. So.
Oh, I know. I cannot maneuver Instagram. Forget it.
I mean, all you do is show pictures, geez.
I can't figure out that thing for the life of me. You know, I just can't. Oh, dear.
So, may I close with a namaste greeting?
Yes.
Okay. I place my hands in prayer position in front of my heart and invite you to do that as well. Namaste. I honor the place in you in which the entire universe dwells. It is a place of love, of light, of truth, and of peace. When you are in that place in you, and I am in that place in me, we are one. Namaste.
Thank you so much for that, Elaine. In closing, we are able to hold that spirit, hold that energy, and hold that focus within ourselves and hope that it will blossom too. So we thank you so much for being our guest today, for sharing your wisdom, your joy, and dancing with us in the ethers. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a true delight. I'm glad to know you. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If you'd like to find out more information about Elaine Hoem, again, the book is Everyday Soul Dances. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information and check out her meditations to get started. And we will be starting our classes this summer, the year 2023, on spiritual training, how to be able to put things together, step off the edge, and start to be able to find your wings. So thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.